everybody, and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Pitch. I'm the vice chairman of Crawley Town Football Club, Ben Levin, and I'm so happy to be joined by my good mate, our mad sports scientist, Ricky McFarlane.
Thanks for having
Ricky,
me. Thanks for
welcome to
having me,
the
Ben.
pod.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me on.
How you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm doing well.
Good. So you are the head of performance here
Yes.
at Crawley Town Football Club.
Yes.
What does that mean?
I'm still trying to figure it out myself, to be honest with you. It kind of means, or for us as a club and us as a team and a company, I'm kind of here to make sure everything ticks off the field, make sure nothing goes dramatically wrong medically or scientifically, and cross my fingers and I hope that happens.
So basically, we have entrusted the health and safety and physical performance of our players with you.
Unfortunately for you, yes.
And tell us about the rest of your team, because we know it's not just you out there.
No, so we have our senior therapist is Tom Dudney. Is someone that's worked with myself and Dr. Joe as a consultant chief medical officer for the last 5-6 years. Tom came with us straight out of university, applied for an internship at our HQ, the company that myself and Dr. Joe and one other friend own, and has stuck with us ever since. Done a great job. Currently, obviously, he's lead therapist here, has worked on multiple world title camps for us in boxing and MMA. Also does a bit of ad-lib work for Brighton. So he's developing into one of the top young practitioners in the country. And obviously Dr. Joe, who you've seen about the place, always fairly lively on match days and keeps the spirit of the place going when he's in. It's kind of our go-to sports doc. One of the brightest men I've ever met in my life. Pleasure of having him as my business partner and my friend. So, yeah, just us three at the minute, and we have some very good interns this year and last year. So, Ellie and Alfie this year and Jung Ho last year. We've been really, really lucky with our interns, to be fair.
So the three main drivers of this program are you, Dr. Joe, and Tom.
Yeah.
Can you explain what your responsibilities are versus Tom's versus Joe's?
Yeah, so Dr. Joe's will be more, our more high-yielding medical output stuff. Working with myself and Tom, along with, if we need surgeons, consultants, we do a lot of our own medical provisions in-house as well. So whether that's diagnostic ultrasound, Dr. Joe will kind of lead that, really like pushes our medical scene a lot further forward than clubs at this level maybe.
So when he's involved, something is not
something
going
cool's
great.
happening, or something not so cool that we're panicking about is happening. Myself, I find myself nowadays more of an organizer. I think the days of me running every gym session and running every return to play session one are, not the most productive thing for, some of the lads and girls that work for us career, because they need to be exposed to what I was ultimately exposed to as a younger practitioner. So I kind of try and make sure everything ticks, and then step in where I need to step in. But I do see part of my role as a cultivator of young practitioners now, and hopefully we're doing that.
And on the pitch, in terms of player health and performance,
Yeah.
what are your main responsibilities?
So we look after basically everything other than football. So what players are eating at hotels, what they're eating at training ground, what supplements they're taking, what their GPS load looks like for the week, the month, the year, rehabilitation, what consultants they see. Basically, we are hopefully able to help push their lives and their health in the right direction to go alongside their football.
And we've been talking a lot about mental health. It's November. Do you help with mental health issues, conversations? Is that a part of your remit?
It is, but we're big proponents of bringing people in that's their expertise. I'm not silly enough to think that I can cover all aspects of human health. We're very lucky, obviously, being in League One and being Football League members, that we have access to things like Sporting Chance, which have been great when we have needed to use them in certainly my 6 years in football. the good thing, I think now we're actually starting to get into a position where there is quite a lot of help players can get, and actually staff as well, because it ain't just players that go through tough times, is it? It's staff members, it's anyone that's associated in a high stress environment is going to have some sort of potential for issue. So we're very lucky that we do have that back in from the EFL and from the club, and having these partners that we can kind of work with to develop and cope with those issues.
One thing you mentioned that's interesting is the idea of players' nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how you think about what our players need to be eating before training, after training, before matches, after matches, and how you prepare that for them?
So, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not much about the rabbit diet, so I'm not adverse to a bit of food. So myself, I come from a rugby background, and if you look at just some basic statistics from rugby, so 12% of injuries in rugby are muscular tissue or soft tissue, adverse to 77% in football. And a lot of that we believe comes down to players are, for lack of a better term, malnourished. For what they're asked to do physically, weekly, monthly, yearly, they don't eat enough. So with all the clubs we work with, first things first is their food intake's going to go through the roof. Sometimes with a little bit of pushback. Footballers generally don't eat enough. And it's our job to provide food not only that is nutritious and nutrient dense, but also that they're actually going to eat. So part of the battle is finding balance between calorie and nutrient dense, and they're actually going to eat that.
So sounds like you're fighting the same battle at home with your 2-year-old son, Milo.
Yeah, I'm losing that one.
You're losing that one. But what about with our players? Are you winning that one? Are you getting them the right food?
Do you know what? We've been very blessed. We've had, in my, nearly 2.5 years here, we've inherited some great professionals that want to do better, that want to learn, that want to do everything they can. And, people learn in different ways. So obviously it takes different methods. But we've been very blessed with having a group of players last year and this year that are willing to try things, are willing to adapt, are willing to cut things out of the diet, willing to put things in. So that is definitely a battle we're winning. It's definitely a battle I'm losing at home with a 3-year-old. But we'll get there, I suppose.
So you drew an interesting link between diet and muscle injury.
Yeah.
Have you seen success in getting players fed more and with the right level of nutrition and decrease in injury in your own squads?
Yeah, so we're very proud of our medical records at this club and across the clubs we work at. Obviously, last year, 97% player availability. I think it was put out there to the media and stuff like that. And this year, not as good as last year, but still 90%. Something, again, we're still very proud of. When it comes to nutrition and that sort of player availability, a player only has one battery. And if that battery's empty, then the risk for injury, for lack of a better scientific term, increases. So for us, it's first things first is make sure the tank's full. And if a player's underfueled, you're never going to be able to reach much further than what they've been fueled for. If they're overfueled, they can dig in deep. So that's not sausage, egg, and beans day of the game, but there are excess calories. I mean, if you did see the meals the players have the night before away games in the hotels, you'd probably be shocked. And some people coming into the environment are actually shocked, usually.
Because of what's being eaten or just the quantity?
What and the quantity.
So what are they eating the night before? So
you would not be surprised. No, you would be surprised to probably see 4 margarita pizzas with their main meals as well. That's not their meal. That is just an accomplice to the meal. Multiple desserts throughout the days, Thursday, Friday, leading into the game. Friday night, 10 o'clock at night, there's Nutella pancakes. There's, so the boys with sweet tooth, they do get satisfied on a Friday night. Ultimately, that could be, a Nutella pancake that might be 500 calories, or they'd have to eat a kilo of sweet potato. I know what I would rather eat as a professional athlete. When I was one, it was a lot easier to put a Nutella pancake in for the same amount of calories and carbs than it was a kilo of sweet potato. So we don't want them going to bed feeling bloated and horrible. They'll sleep better generally hormonally if they have a decent amount of sugar before bed, blunt some cortisol. we just try to get as many calories in them as possible.
So how do you manage diet on the road? How do you figure out what you take with you or what the menu is going to be?
It takes some figuring out with squads. Obviously, different boys have different habits. Usually like to find, but by the time, the 8th or 9th, 10th game comes around, you haven't got much moving around to do in terms of what needs to be taken. Obviously, a lot of water. We go through a hell of a lot of water. Supplements, we go through a lot of electrolytes, like carb powder, because we're just constantly trying to get carbohydrates into the boys. And then in terms of like snacks and stuff, you kind of by that point know what the boys will eat more of, and that's generally what you'll buy more of. You kind of figure it out as you go along.
And I know that there is, you like to give out caffeine chews. What are your other game day supplements that you provide?
Our supplement smorgasbord. We actually use a lot more liquid nutrition on game day than maybe some people are used to when they first come here. For us, the main amount of their fueling is done the day before, and the day before that, and the day before that. So game day, we want them to be light, and able to run but full of fuel. So the boys will will have access and are encouraged to drink carbohydrate drinks. There's gels, you've seen us throw on the pitch from time to time. Caffeine shots, caffeine gels. We try and keep the boys away from as much caffeine as we can Thursday, Friday. And then Saturday have that hit of caffeine, which is obviously going to help with their physical outputs. And then anything more specific, collagen shots, recovery drinks, creatine. There's quite a lot that goes into the model athlete, and we, as a club, we're quite proud that we can kind of provide that as well.
Tell us about the gels that we see the players both rushing out to each other, passing them around, and there's once in a while there's a 30-meter throw from the bench. So tell us about the gels, and do you guys practice the gel tosses?
No, so something we should practice on. My recent performances throwing the gels on have gone well short. But all they are is essentially a sugar solution with some added electrolytes. You can get them with caffeine. Once players do start to empty the tank a little bit, we're looking to get some fast carbohydrates into their system, and the gel is a really easy way of doing that alongside caffeine.
And does someone say, Rick, I'm feeling tired, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, I'm cramping? When is the right time for them to call for a gel?
Yeah, it can be fairly individualized. Certain players, if you've been around them for long enough, you know that around 70 minutes, 80 minutes, they're going to need one. And then you get other players, like young Raf, that likes the flavour of them, so you have to keep them away from him. But yeah, that becomes fairly individualized. Players are very good nowadays in knowing their own bodies. They know, or they're kind of intuitive of what they need and when. So a lot of times they'll tell you, I'm probably going to need a gel at 60 minutes or.
So if you guys are watching the home dugout on match day, Ricky's either in the dugout or at home. When we're here at the Broadfield, he's to the left of the dugout.
Yeah.
Sitting on his little stool, monitoring some type of device.
Yes.
What are you looking at?
We're looking at the live feedback from the GPS that the boys wear in the back of their shirts.
In their sports bras.
Yes. Yeah. In the sports bras. So we're looking at the live feedback we can get, looking if we can match that to the metrics we want, and within reason, if we're within certain limits, we can guesstimate that whether we're going to have a positive result or not. Something we did extensively in the past, and with a new squad, you have to then, restart those procedures and find out what gives you positive results again. So
what are we looking at? Distance traveled, maximum velocity?
Yeah, total distance, maximum velocity, high speed running, which is anything over 5.5 meters per second. Sprint distance, accelerations, decelerations. We're looking at a whole host of metrics to see where the individual's at, and whether a substitution should be made, or where the team's at as a group.
So when it comes to substitutions, are you saying, so-and-so's already run a 10K today, we got to get him out? Or do you say, can you look at are there other numbers that show that he's decreasing in his performance and therefore?
Yeah, so you can get like drop-off markers and stuff like that, which we do use. Another one would be heart rate monitors. You can connect those GPSs to heart rates if the boys wear them. and you can, within reason, again, people have different tolerances. You can, kind of guesstimate where they're at.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of distance traveled, what's our average right now, and sort of who what position on our pitch or which player is generally running the most?
As our average as a team, we run between 106 and 111, 112 kilometers a game.
That's all 10 players plus subs.
Yes, yeah. We are very lucky to have some boys that can really run for distance. And I'm a big believer in your minimum requirement as a professional athlete is to work and outwork the opponent. And we have got boys that can do that. We've got probably 5 or 6 lads that can comfortably run over 11k a game, comfortably. We've had 2 boys run over 13 kilometers a game this season, which is extraordinary.
Wow.
That's a real high output. Even, for example, the other end of the scale with dynamic efforts, Pan Kamara on Saturday against Bristol Rovers ran over 1,000 meters of high speed running, over 300 meters of sprint distance, which is a hell of a lot. It's a hell of a lot. He should have been carried off the pitch, really.
He definitely left it all out there. You could see it on his
Yeah,
face.
and as they all do, we're very lucky, and we have been very lucky last year and this year that we've got an honest group, and they're willing to run through the wall. I don't know how personally I would deal with if they weren't, but
well, that's why we've got you to make sure
lucky.
they are.
We've been very lucky.
So how does that tracking translate to training as well?
So you have something, not to bore anyone, but we have something called acute chronic load. So we look at how the last 7 days looks against 28 days. That allows us to plan our training. If we want certain outputs from a game, what we're going to put in the training week to help, produce that, and also how are we reducing the risk of injury, or over spiking, doing too much or doing too little. It becomes more of a yearly theme rather than a daily thing. So how do we look over a year is where we would really show if we're successful GPS wise compared to a week.
Interesting. So what tools do we use other than the trackers that they wear in there?
So we're lucky enough to have some quite good valved kit at the training ground. So we have some monitoring devices, jump platforms, force decks, valved force frame, which is all bits of kit that we use to monitor players' well-being and maximal strengths, isometric strengths, their jumping. We also have an in-body scanner which looks at muscle tissue, fat tissue, body water, all those sorts of things. So we're lucky enough to have some kit that we can actually really use and make a difference with at the training ground. Part of that, we built our gym in the summer last pre-season, I think it was. We built a gym on site with stuff that we thought was ideal for the players. So yeah, we've got some kit we put to good use.
So I think for the modern consumer, one thing that we're starting to track for our own health is our sleep, and we've got different watches and this, that, and the other.
Yes.
Do you track player sleep? Do they submit sleep scores? How does that work?
Yeah, so they have like a daily welfare questionnaire where they, before they get into the training ground, they answer some basic slide marker questions about sleep, muscle soreness, fatigue, mood, all that sort of stuff. It just gives us a little insight into where they're at. I am a big believer in having dialogue with everyone daily, every morning, whether that's hello, whether that's make me a cup of coffee. You can generally tell where someone is from first contact with them in the mornings, and it becomes further dialogue if needed. We like to think that the players can approach us, and if someone's not feeling great, they can approach us. We're not going to tell them to man up or anything silly. We're going to take into account what they're saying and then make a educated decision from there.
So when you see a player is tired, feels fatigued, they're making their coffee a little more slowly than normal, how do you factor that into anything that's going on at training? Are you watching to see if they are injured? Are you watching to see if they're giving effort?
Before they get on the pitch, we'll obviously have a conversation with them. We have noticed this. Are you feeling okay? They can tell us yeah or nay. We do have some objective markers, so they'll be looking at their body weight, their jumps to test their central nervous system fatigue, some different strength tests before they even get on the pitch. That allows us to make a guided decision on whether they should actually enter the field of training that day. And then ultimately talk with the coaching staff and said, we've found this, he looks like this. And generally, both sets of coaching staff that I've been under at this club have been of the thought that if they're not well that day, then 1 day missed is 10 days gained. If they get injured in that day, then they're not well.
So I've had the privilege of being around training and understanding the pattern of those days, the rhythms. Can you explain to everybody what you do to get the players ready, what their training preparation looks like, and then the sort of the gym session and all of that?
So players will come in the morning, generally 9:30. They'll weigh in. They usually have some sort of supplement drink to start their day, like electrolytes, creatine, whatever we need to have in them that first thing that day. It's good for the gut and for your body to be hydrated before eating, so that's the first thing that goes into them. They'll have their breakfast. Whatever team meetings need to go on will go on then. Before they go onto the pitch, they'll have activation, which is kind of like a mini gym / Pilates session. Prepare their bodies to go onto the pitch and warm up further.
Like an active stretch?
Yeah, almost, yeah. We do quite a lot of gym work in that. Then they'll go out onto the pitch, do their warm-up generally with myself or Tom, and then into the football.
And what about afterwards?
Well, we do quite a lot of gym work. So the boys will have anywhere between 3 and 5 gym sessions a week to get through, depending on what their schedule looks like and what their needs are. Obviously, older players, we haven't got many of them now, will probably do a little bit less. Their bodies can't take as much, and they aren't looking to develop, they're looking to maintain. Anywhere between 3 and 5 gym sessions a week.
So training, you're there early, you're getting the players ready, you're making sure they're healthy afterwards, stretched out, exercise, they've hit the gym, etc.
Yeah.
That's sort of the standard.
Yeah.
But what about for the injured players? What goes on with them?
We've got a little bit of reputation amongst the players. No one wants to get injured because you're
Well, they'd
scared.
have to hang out with you.
Yeah, constantly. And my jokes are terrible. But the schedule for injured players is quite grueling. You are in, some clubs, players can go and as they please, come and go as they please when injured. Our club is a bit more like a military boot camp when you are injured. Set times to do set things. And if they're not done, we're not happy because ultimately it's the player's career that they're not doing the work for, not mine. My career ended 12 years ago, 11 years ago, whatever it was. And it's for them, and we don't put it in their individual planners unless we think it'll benefit them. So if they don't do it, then unfortunately it's a bad time for them.
So how do you measure if someone's ready to come back or not?
Again, objective markers. So we're looking at their previous scores. We're looking at their previous outputs. Once they've done their return to play, like a staggered approach to return to training, it then becomes more of an eye thing, I believe. I don't think there's anything better than a coach's eye. They could hit all their objective markers. They could do all of it, but if they don't look right when they come back, then they're not right. And that's when you have to step in and do the human part of it.
But at what point do you say, yeah, they're ready to train or they're ready to go full speed? Is that 80% of their previous marker, 90%, 110%?
It all depends on the injury and the person. But you'll have like a generalized guideline of return to play from injuries that you would have maybe from consultants or surgeons and from research that's been done over the last 50 years. And then you have the individual concept of it. So what does that person heal like? We've had people here that heal incredibly. Like, you're scratching your head and thinking, well, this scientifically is impossible, but it's happened. And then you'll have people that heal a little bit slower. So you have to create a bit of a pie chart of, what's scientifically right, what's ethically right, and what's right for the person and the individual.
Fascinating. So I assume there are some players that you're really hoping they don't get injured because you don't want to have to hang out with them.
Yeah, maybe. If they don't like country music or bad jokes, then it's bad for both of us.
So let's talk match day.
Okay.
So, we have a 3:00 kickoff here. What time do you get here? What are you doing? What's it like in the lead up?
I am a bit of a weirdo. I like to get here very early, so I'm usually arriving by 11 o'clock, just to make sure, if anything is going to go wrong, I'm here early enough for me to panic in my room. But match day looks like arrive obviously with the coaching staff, set out all the supplements for the day. Generally with Alfie, one of the interns. Make sure the GPS is charged. Make sure the live receivers are all ready to go, and everything we need for our day is done. Have our little 5-minute chat with, Tom and the physio interns. Even down to make sure the walkie-talkies are all ready to go, earpieces are set, so that when the manicness happens at probably 1:30 and up until 5:30, that we're prepared for everything.
So who's on the headsets? Who are you talking to?
Myself, Tom, and usually the match day doc, which is Dr. Loga.
So one of the most subtly fun moments of a football match can be that moment where you're not sure if the player's injured or faking, and whether or not the physio is going to run out or not. Is it going to happen? Is he going to stay? How does Tom decide whether to go out or not?
He'll say, if you was to ask Tom, he will say by eye, but I think it's generally because I scream no or yes. I don't think he wants to go against it.
How do you make that decision?
I'm a little bit more. Listen, if it's something like head, my own career finished through concussions and stuff like that. So if it's head injury, no problem. If it's obviously a leg break or something that looks bad, go on. If it's cramp or something like, you might have heard me shout out, get up before in the past, or walk off, because ultimately, like, if a physio enters the field of play in the Football League, the player has to come off the pitch for 30 seconds. That 30 seconds could be massive in the context of the game. And I'm big for, we'll make a substitute if we need to, but we need 11 players on the pitch. If you can last 30 seconds, we'll sub someone on in 30 seconds, but having 10 men on the pitch is not great for anyone at any time. So it's a bit of a spare of the moment decision, but one that's, the more decisions you make, obviously, the better you get over time, experience.
So Tom runs out there, and I hope during the week he's running with his big medical bag as well.
He certainly eats enough to fuel what he's doing. If you've ever worked with Tom, he just does not stop eating the entire time. You'd think that was me in the training ground, but it's not.
Well, sets a good precedent for the players, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So Tom rushes out.
Yeah.
And someone's lying on the ground in pain.
Yeah.
What does he say?
He's in pain. And I go, what with? No. So we have like a...
He gets to the player and says, "What's up? What's the matter?"
Yeah. We have like a standardized chat that we go through over the walkie-talkies. So first impressions, what's being reported by the player, and then Tom will go through his initial checks. I'll obviously feed back to coaching staff if coaching staff ain't on the same channel as us in the walkies. And then it goes into, you've probably got, if they're walking off with the player to the sideline to then try and come back on, you've probably got the best part of 90 seconds to make a decision. Probably 60 seconds realistically. And then we're going through what's secondary faults, what could be the worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario. Let's go with something in between. And if it's, anything that you think this could potentially, cause a player further harm, then it's time to come off. If it's, I think they can run it off, it probably may just impact, then see how tough they are.
And how much do you rely on the player's self-diagnosis and willingness to put themselves out there?
Less and less the older I get.
Uh-huh.
I think, again, it comes down to knowing the person. We've had some funny ones with Addy, the most dramatic man on earth. He'll get cramp and you think someone's severed his leg off. Then you've got the other end of the spectrum. Flinty, for example, unfortunately injured himself away at Northampton and has tried to run on for 20 metres with a pretty significant injury. Nothing against either of them. It's just the way they are as people. And that, again, changes your observation of the issue.
So we, as supporters, see our players warming up. when we see them going up and down the sideline, and sometimes maybe they're just trying to stay physically warm, not even athletically warm.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just trying to hang out with their mates down there. Maybe they're trying to stretch. Do you track their warm up so you can look at Rob and say, "Hey, he's actually ready"? And if so, how do you do that?
Well, generally, that's up until the point at which we know they're probably going to come on. That's just core temperature maintenance stuff. Make sure we stay nice and loose. And then if we have, a dedicated time that someone's going to come on, that next 12 minutes leading to them coming to the pitch is a thorough warm up. And then we know once they've done maybe 2 to 3 open ups where they've accelerated with some decent power, we know they're ready to go.
And you're tracking the power and everything?
Yeah.
So do you choreograph their warm ups, or do you sort of let them stay loose however they want, and then
we choreograph the initial warm up, and then right before they come on, in between, it's kind of what they need personally. As long as they stay, relatively warm, and they're up at least twice per half. And obviously at half time we do a warm up with them as well.
And then what about post match? What are you doing? What are the players doing? Sometimes we see them running on the pitch after. What's going on? What happens at 5
that's just
o'clock
a
and
top-up
on?
scenario. So obviously we want to try and keep the players that haven't played as much as close to the ones that have in terms of their total load, and certain metrics, high speed running, sprint distance. So that's us trying to, keep the boys with as close to that as possible.
Interesting. And what are you doing to help recovery immediately?
So anything from supplementation, so the boys are taking in recovery drinks, tons of fluids. There's always food available for the players straight after the game.
Shout out to Domino's. Thank you, Domino's.
Thank you, Domino's. Some high calorie food. And then we have access to, or the boys have access through the club to Normatex, which are compression leggings that create a massage sensation. Game readies, which is the same but with cold. And obviously staff are there to treat the players after the game as well. And
then right back into training. It all starts again.
Yeah.
So, Ricky, what is your favorite part of this job?
Seeing players that have previously been questioned go on and do what they dreamt of, which we see a lot of last year. Obviously, because we haven't had that much of a season yet. Players that maybe have dropped out of the professional football setup and come back in and then gone on. Obviously, getting promoted was great. This is a job where most of your wins are not on game day. So if you get your wins during the week, then hopefully you've contributed to the team getting their wins on the weekend. So adherence, perseverance, we've got a saying, the best ability is availability. So it's really cool to see when everyone does exactly what they need to do every day of every week of every month. Because ultimately they're giving themselves the best chance as an athlete.
And which horse makes the most winnings?
The one that's in the most races.
Yeah, and thankfully we got you looking out for our horses out there.
Not riding them though, because it might break the horse's back.
So this is a fascinating career, and you've got a background as a sportsman yourself, which I think probably helps you dealing with the players. Tell us about your career as an athlete.
So I started off as an overweight goalkeeper as a kid, and quickly realised I was never going to be anywhere near a footballer. I went to a school that was a big rugby school. Started playing rugby, started playing for my local club. From there, I got selected for Harlequins Rugby League, senior academy level, so 17s, 18s. And then after that, went and played for Cambridge, Southend, until my retirement at 23. I retired through far too many concussions and a bit of cervical spine damage.
So you were a professional rugby player?
So I played at Harlequins, which at the time was a Super League club, Premier League club, and then played most of my career in League One, League Two.
And what about any international?
So I had a couple of call-ups, England Counties 21s and stuff like that.
Wild.
Yeah.
And it was injuries that ended your career?
Yes.
So at what point did you think about becoming a sports scientist like you are?
In the last 2 to 3 years of my career, I kind of knew that I weren't going to have a long career.
Was that because of playing style?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just putting your head in.
Yeah, I had absolutely no technique to anything I did. It was just commitment and hustle, which usually meant having a couple of operations a year. So I kind of knew that was not going to last forever. Started education like sports science, the usual route. And then when ultimately I'm in retirement, thought, right, I'm going to get straight to work. I want to be involved in professional sport. I'm not going to be a professional sportsman. I want to be, in and around it. I wasn't too keen on being like a technical coach. The club that I retired at, Cambridge, were fantastic with me. They said, come and be, assistant defence coach, come and be assistant S&C coach. And I did. I think I helped out with the forwards and defence for 4 games. Couldn't do it. Mentally, it weren't great for me. But S&C was unbelievable. I was never technically a gifted player, so everything I did was about work rate and fitness and strength, and so a natural transition for me was strength and conditioning.
So what was your first job? Was with Cambridge, and then you did strength and conditioning.
Yeah, so it was not like a player intern sort of thing at Cambridge. Then from there, I moved to America. Went to America, did a little bit of work.
Great decision.
Yeah, great decision. One town along from where Jeremy Kelly's from.
In North Carolina.
Advanced North Carolina, Winston-Salem. And then I came back, started working for my dad in the National League South, for Horn Church. Shout out Horn Church. And then started working a lot in boxing. So started working a lot in boxing, MMA. And then 5 years ago, got a call from Swindon. So, do you fancy a bit of football? 6 years ago, maybe. And haven't looked back since.
So, tell us about the difference between a fighter, a boxer, and a footballer. A fighter, a boxer, and a footballer.
One spends their life pretending they're not hurt. One spends their life pretending they are hurt. No, they're different worlds. They do intertwine. They are completely different worlds. However, the true magic happens in football when they start thinking like boxers. And what I mean by that is they know that if they don't take every single opportunity they've got to take every day, that it could turn them in terms of decisions, games, whatever. So when footballers start thinking, I'm going to do everything I possibly can, the team then wins. Especially if you get a group doing it.
Rick, we're lucky to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for all the work you do for the team. Hopefully you're bringing that boxer mentality in. And stay tuned for the next episode coming up in the next few weeks. Thanks, everyone.